Hello, everybody. Casey Roan here from HYCU. We'll let others join for just about 30 seconds here or so, and then we'll get started with the presentation. While we're letting the few hop in, I want to introduce myself as Casey. Like I said, I've been at HYCU for a little over a year now. I work in the Central Texas region, but cover a lot of territories outside that as an account executive, and work alongside Carlos Talbot. If Carlos, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. Thanks, Casey. Yeah, this is Carlos Talbot. I'm been at HYCU now for a little over 2 months, based in the Midwest up here in the Chicago area, working with Casey and others, other account reps here at HYCU.
Awesome. Thank you, Carlos. So I guess we'll get started. Today, the presentation will be focused around ransomware recovery, what HYCU can do to help customers not only prevent it, but also ensure that they're able to recover from it. We'll talk about the plethora of portfolio products that we support, all the way from the on-premise side to the public cloud, as well as O365. So we'll talk through all those solutions and kind of what our technology is able to do to help customers better themselves in terms of having a reliable ransomware recovery plan. To start, we'll talk about who HYCU is, and essentially, we've been in the backup space for quite some time, headquartered out of Boston, and really our goal was when coming to market was to purpose-built technologies to protect the on-premise world, so that VMware's, Nutanix, Isilon, file services all across the board, and really allow mobility and innovation for customers to leverage not only the same technology to standardize backup and recovery on-prem, but also the same in the public cloud. So that's where we started, and kind of where we're headed is just becoming that global presence of multi-cloud data protection. If we look at how many customers we have, a little over 3,100 since 2017. So tremendous growth, funded by some great companies, Bain Capital, Acrew Financial, Atlassian, Cisco Investments. So have very tight alignment in terms of the financial backing of the company, but also from an alliances perspective, really great technology partners, all the public cloud providers. I mentioned most of them on the back end. But also, we do great work with protecting Kubernetes workloads in the cloud, on-premise, as well as SAP HANA. So some of the major applications and use cases customers are organizations are leveraging today are stuff that we're able to protect and keep secure. If we look at what our technology offers at a high level, we really wanted to solve for traditional complexities first. So the on-premise traditional backup and recovery technologies that became really very difficult to deploy and manage. We wanted to solve that and simplify the operational aspects there, which is essentially going to drive costs down, speed up efficiencies within the organization. And on top of that, do the same thing for the cloud. So really what we're doing is providing a reliable, simplistic way to back up and recover data, ensure that ransomware recovery, and make sure that we can really protect all the data sets that organizations are leveraging today. If we look at best case ransomware protection, we want to make sure that the backups are secure. So make sure ransomware can't come in, encrypt your production environment, and then move their way over to the backup side and wipe out your backups. So the first step is really making sure that you're either enabled with a target that's immutable, or leverage a software technology that can make sure that these ransomware technologies that are out there can't come in and encrypt that data. And then something that's able to, once ransomware is recognized on production, ensure that we can recover that data set back to the given state. So like I mentioned, worm-based technologies allow for customers to organizations to lock their data down, make sure ransomware can't come in. Leveraging HYCU allows customers to provide multi-tenancy as well as a network segmentation. So we can multi-home that single Linux VM that HYCU software would be deployed on, allowing you to not have access from production or visibility into that backup data set. Disable backup deletion. So from HYCU's deployment and installation, you can disable any backup deletion. So you set your policies. No one within the organization or outside of the organization can go in and actually delete that data. And then the last piece is detailed access control. So there's many different layers to the actual security of just leveraging HYCU. And we allow for customers that have different sets of the organization that need the availability or accessibility to backup data and recover certain applications. We allow for the segmentation of that as well. And Carlos, do you want to add anything about that, or what are like relevant use cases for the detailed access control?
Yeah, certainly, Casey. You can have restore operators or application owners that only allow access to recover their particular servers that they have access to. So you can restrict in that configuration for role-based access what a user has the ability to restore, or even just a viewer only, so they can view stats, but they can't make any changes. So a lot of granular control in there, and it's also multi-tenant capable.
Perfect. Thanks for add there. Okay. So HYCU being a black box solution, what we mean by that is essentially instead of being reliant on Windows-based technologies or being heavily invested into hardware-centric backup solutions, HYCU provides a fully black box secure appliance, which is Linux-based. You deploy a single Linux VM on VMware or on-premise on your Nutanix environment. And that allows you the ability to make sure that that remains secure. And we've had multiple customers hit with ransomware. The only thing that wasn't actually encrypted was the HYCU VM, the HYCU controller. So we have many use cases and proof around the security of that and viability. If we look at the cloud providers, we provide full backup as a service for AWS, Azure, GCP, Kubernetes in the cloud, as well as Office 365. So really what we're trying to do there is enable the customers with the ability to back up and recover data in a standardized fashion without having to deploy anything, manage anything, have to actually manage storage on the back end. So we wanted to streamline that whole process and make sure customers don't have an ongoing cloud compute cost or on their backup solution. So that's fully as a service. Secure integration with every platform. What I mean by that is we directly integrate into all the security protocols within each platform. So if it's Google IAM or any of the other access management to that cloud environment, we integrate with all of those to make that seamless process of onboarding. And then the last piece there is we keep track of unusual activity. What I mean by that is essentially allowing the ability to monitor the change rates of the data sets and make sure if there is ransomware-like activity, you're alerted from it. You're alerted about it, and you're able to go in and then dig deep to figure out what's going on, make sure it's not some sort of malicious activity. So these are the steps to making sure that ransomware is able to recover, or you're able to recover from ransomware. Excuse me. Click through this. So essentially, the ability that we're trying to enable is just efficient recovery from remote targets and allowing the ability to have a one-click type of simplistic approach to recovering data sets across all of the platforms, and having a single user interface to actually have visibility into those data sets, allowing customers to not have to have experts for every single platform they're trying to back up. So I know we just breezed through that, and that was kind of the goal of this because this is a demo-nar. If you want to let Carlos hop into the UI now. So if there are any questions, make sure to throw those into the chat, and we'll be sure to call them out as they come. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Casey. You guys can see my screen here? Yeah. Perfect. So we're looking at the HYCU Protégé central console. It's our single pane of glass that gives you visibility across all your environments, whether these are on-prem data centers or workloads in the cloud that you're protecting. So you can get an instant view of all the virtual machines, physical servers, cloud instances, mailboxes, and M365 that you're protecting, and as well as the recovery stats for all of them. So as you can see, I can drill down and have a view of all those environments. And you can see that we have Azure, O365, our on-prem systems. I'm going to jump from here into the on-prem environment to show you the integration with VMware, with Nutanix, with our physical servers capabilities. So this is our central HYCU console, and you can see it's has a very simplistic approach that's very easy, very easy learning curve to learn how to deploy this, how to manage your environment, and how to scale it as well. And you can see here we have visibility not only into the servers, but also the applications running on them. I'll talk about in a minute here our patented discovery process for actually querying all the servers out there to see whether they're running Exchange or running SQL, Oracle, other applications like that. But let's talk about what does it take to deploy the HYCU controller. So when you set up this virtual machine, it's delivered as an OVA. The first thing we want to go in here is configure the sources. So in here we can go and say, let's pick my example here of my hypervisors. So in this case, we have a view of all of our hypervisors. Hey, Casey, are you still seeing my screen?
I'm not seeing it actually.
For some reason it dropped. Okay, let me make sure it is.
Okay, you're back
here.
Back up and running.
All right. Thanks. So yeah, the first thing you do once you configure deploy the HYCU controller is we want to configure what sources are we going to back up. So from this window here, we can add our Nutanix clusters, our VMware clusters. You can see we have multiple environments that we're protecting under one controller, but we also can add our file servers. Those are Nutanix file systems, but also Dell's OneFS that we have full integration with and both we can back up leveraging the APIs for snapshot integration. And then finally, the physical servers. And then these are all your physical servers in your environment. And once you've added all those sources, we can go ahead and configure the credentials. So, and I'll get to that in a second. One thing I will mention here too, though, when it comes to backing up those VMs, physical servers, we have a pretty broad availability of targets, right? So when you want to back up that virtual machine or that physical server, you can send it to any NAS in your data center, any object storage, iSCSI, even support tape. And you'll see here in this list, it's pretty broad number of options. We even have integration with or support with deduplication devices like Extragrid, Data Domain, Store Once as an example. And you can see here that not only do we support object storage, but we can back up directly to object storage with worm capabilities enabled. So in this example, we have an Azure bucket here with the worm enabled. Same thing with Google Cloud. So when it comes to ransomware protection, like Casey mentioned, being able to back up directly into an object storage container with the worm capability turned on is very critical for a lot of our customers to be able to have that capability. Okay, so this is where we configure those targets. So once we have the sources defined and the targets defined, we also have policies.
Hey, Carlos,
this is
quickly hop in. There's a question. Do
Yes.
you see customers backing up directly to cloud and not leveraging on-prem targets anymore? From one of the
we do. We see a mixture of both. We see, we have customers, for example, a good use case, customers, a lot of robo sites. They don't have the luxury of additional on-prem storage for those locations. They back up directly into the cloud. And by that, that we support all types of cloud, not just the 3 hyperscalers, but others like Wasabi with worm capabilities. So it's very flexible where you want to back up that data to. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Carlos.
Sure. So once those targets are configured, we want to configure our policies. And by default, we have SLAs for gold, bronze, silver. And this determines how often, how frequent are you going to back up your systems. So if I look at my bronze policy, it has a default setting, and you can create your own policy if you want as well. And here we show how often are we going to be backing it up. So that's the RPO. This is a RPO of a day. Also recover within a certain time frame. That's our RTO. And then what is the retention? We can also configure backup copies. Maybe you want to copy a local copy on-prem or in the cloud, but then a secondary copy at another data center or another location. We can support that. We also support archiving. So for long-term retention using GFS policies, where your weeklies, your monthlies, your yearlies can go to archive. And you'll see we have fast restore support. That's a capability within our Nutanix clusters. And like Casey mentioned, when it comes to rapid recovery from ransomware, having that fast restore, we can quickly recover our virtual machines from the Nutanix snapshots without having to go to the backup files. We also have the capability of backing up from replicas with the Nutanix clusters and protection domains. Going back to that scenario of having a lot of robo sites in a hub and spoke model, you can have all those remote locations replicate into a central hub where then we can do the backup centrally from one location. Okay. One thing to note too about the recovery period, the RTO, we actually monitor the performance of our backup targets. So when it comes to compliance, you'll see if you can't recover this this backup, whether it's on-prem or maybe from the cloud, since we're monitoring the performance, we'll warn you and say that, hey, it's going to take more than 3 hours or more than an hour to recover this VM. So our policies will tell you whether you're in compliance or not. If you're backing up within the RPO period, and if you can recover it within the RTO period as well. Okay. So once we have those policies in place, then it's time to do some backups. So you'll see that now that I have sources defined already, we can have visibility into all of our virtual machines in the environment. And this is across all the various Nutanix clusters, the VMware clusters, or any physical servers that were also discovered. Okay. And you can see here, if I go into one of my systems here, and let's actually pick one. I know I have a SQL server in this list here. You can see it's part of the silver policy. I want to configure it with a credentials so that we can actually discover what's running on that machine. So I go to my credentials tab here. And because it's a SQL server, I'm going to assign it the SQL administration's credential. You can see here we have a list of multiple credentials and these are all groups. So you can have a credential for, you might have a dozen Exchange servers. All you need is one credential for it. That's why we call them credential groups. So this particular system is a SQL system. So I'm going to give it the SQL admin credential. And I click on assign. And you can actually select multiple VMs and give them that credential assignment. And it's going to go off and run a discovery process. It connects to the system and determines, hey, this is a Windows server and it's running a Windows application. It's got Microsoft SQL. So we're good here now. So now we can actually do application consistent backups of this virtual machine, not just an image level backup of the server, but actually a consistent backup of the application as well. Remember I mentioned earlier, we have a patent discovery in how we discover the systems. So whether it's physical server, whether it's a cloud instance, or even on-prem virtual machine, we can go ahead and query that system without the use of any agents. That's another thing that really distinguishes our capabilities here. Is we do not use any agents for VMs, for physicals, or for cloud instances. Okay, so now that we've discovered that VM, I can go into my applications tab. And because of that discovery process, it's registered that this machine, which is the SQL server, happens to have a SQL database on it. So I can go ahead and fire off a backup of that. So let's go ahead and do that. Oh, but before I do the backup, let's go do that, and I'll run the restore in the background. So I'll fire off a backup. While that's running, let's look at what recovery options are available for this system here. So if I pick any of the SQL servers, you'll see that I have the ability to do a restore of the system here. So I'll click on restore. And you'll see that I have, I can restore the entire server, or I can restore a database. So by restoring the whole server, it recovers the entire virtual machine, the whole image, and every database running on there. But I can be selective and say, I only want to restore a single database. And I can restore it to the original source, or I can clone it to a different server altogether. and even choose a different storage container. And then last thing is I can also recover either the entire instance or a single database running on that system. Remember, again, we're recovering this without use of any agents. So backup and recovery is possible without the use of any agents. And that's really helpful for a lot of our customers, especially if you're talking about thousands of VMs, thousands of physical servers. You don't have to deploy any kind of backup software on there because we can handle this without the use of agents. Okay. So that's how you do the restore process. And then you'll see that that backup that we just ran is completed. We can even go into the details and find out how that backup process was done. So we can actually look at all the, and you'll see that we do quiesce the virtual machine. We're going through the SQL APIs for quiescing the database, truncating the logs, backing up the transaction logs. All that is being done through that. The same process is done for Oracle, for other applications as well that we support.
Hey, Carlos, another question someone
So
just
once we've
asked,
done
is that policy that you created earlier, is that the same policy that you could use for virtual machines, physical servers, and also the applications, or do you have to use different policies for each?
For physical servers, we have the requirement that we have to back up to a local SMB NFS. So that's why we normally have a separate policy for those. But you can have the same type of RPO and RTO on the physical policies that you have with your VMs as well. Okay. So now when it comes to time to recover, we saw earlier how we can restore a virtual machine using the application recovery of a database. What if we want to recover it to a different location? This is one of another powerful features of the HYCU Protégé, being able to recover or spinning up a VM into the cloud. So let's pick a VM that I have that I know that has been backed up. This happens to be a Linux VM. So I'm going to go and pick the most recent backup here. And you'll see that I can restore the files locally, so it will give me a browser view into the root folder and all the underlying mount points. I can restore the entire image of the VM locally, but I also can recover it into the cloud. So I'm going to pick this one here. And you'll see that I have options into Google, Azure. Very shortly, we'll have AWS here as an option as well. And then I can pick the service account that I want to recover this into, what project within GCP that I want this recovered under, and then what region. And then I'll just pick a default region here. Let's go into, let's see, Europe. And then what particular zone in that environment. And then the next section here essentially is what I want to call this VM inside Google. And we'll just give it a suffix here with my initials here. And notice that by default, it automatically picks the number of cores in memory because it has that information in the backup files. So, and that's why it gave you a default t-shirt size of what instance size I want within Google. And then it also knows it's a Linux VM, so I don't need to pick that as well, but I'll just click on spin up. Now, this is an example of just one VM, but we can actually do a bulk recovery of multiple VMs into GCP, into Azure, or the other environments. While this is recovering, let's actually jump over into the HYCU controller for GCP. So you'll see that it's the same look and feel as the on-prem controller. It's just the nomenclature is showing you all the Google related, so Google buckets versus Azure, containers. So it's all set up appropriately. You'll see that within the GCP instance here, I have the same view. Instead of VMs, I have instances, applications, and then I can drill down and look at all my instances in my environment. And you can see that it also shows me what zones are part of, whether they've been backed up, whether they're in compliance, meaning, they've been backed up within that RTO window and RPO, and have that recovery point objective as well met. Now we can back up instances within Google, but we also can back up buckets independently. And that's a huge, very powerful feature. A lot of our customers like this because maybe they're using a PaaS solution within Google that has no APIs for backing it up. We can go ahead and take a bucket here and say, I want to back this up on a daily basis or hourly basis, and I can assign it a pre and post script. Maybe you're quiescing some instances on there, some containers, or some container instances we can do that all through here and back up that bucket to another region within Google. Just like with on-prem, we also have the ability to do policies, so we can set up your RPO and RTO, so having daily backups, recovering that within a certain time frame. Also, you can create up copies, so you can copy this to another Google region. Archiving is also supported. And then you can also specify backup windows, because policies by default, they will run at any time during the day. So unlike some other solutions that you have, they force you to tell, I need to start my backups at 6 p.m. and my second backup job needs to start at 7 p.m. Oh, they might stagger and they might get busy there. These are intelligent policies that will back up your VMs and instances based on the RPO that you requested. Okay. And then finally, when it comes to our environments for GCP and Azure, these are the targets, and these are all obviously buckets in Google. It does tell you what kind of storage class you're backing up to, whether it's standard, regional, and different categories available, as well as what location they're part of. So it helps you to be mindful of whether you're going to be doing any egress costs across
And
regions.
Carlos, just one thing to add there also about the targets within the cloud accounts. Like if you look at some of our competition, they're going to actually exfiltrate your data and they're going to own the data set. HYCU actually, because we're doing it as a service and allowing you to back it up to your local project space, we don't actually own any of the data. So from a security perspective, we're really just the enabler for you guys to back it up and the ability to recover it within your own project space. So it's much more secure, and most organizations have been talking about that with us.
And thank you, Casey. You brought up a good point here that the HYCU instance inside Google and inside Azure, that runs within our control plane, so within the HYCU subscription. But your data is stored and retained within your subscription. So it provides that security model that a lot of customers are looking for. And it also is natively elastic. So you don't have to configure any worker instances or anything like that. Whether you're backing up 100 VMs instances inside Google or thousands, the solution scales accordingly. And we automatically configure all that in the back end for you. So it is a true SaaS solution, just like Casey mentioned.
And Carlos, I know we have just, this was a 30-minute demo-nar, correct? Okay, awesome. I was going to say we have a couple minutes left, and there is a few questions in the chat here. Are we at a point where we want to ask those, or do you want to continue?
I think so. We only have 2 minutes left.
Perfect.
Here.
So the first question is actually perfect. You're on the screen for it. About Office 365 backups. When I perform the backup, if the user has MFA enabled, will I have any problem because of layer 2 security?
I'll have to take that as an action item. I think I'm not sure if that's going to be a challenge or not, but let's look at the next question here, and we can follow up with this here as well. HYCU recently announced it will provide.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll follow up on that one. Not a problem. And
yes,
the second one.
This is the second question. Is the free 1 terabyte offer for AWS.
Yeah, so I actually don't know the details of this as well because we just announced it last week. Basically, we're doing a free 1 terabyte of backup within AWS, and the question was around, is this inclusive of all of the costs associated with using the AWS backup for HYCU? So I know fundamentally all of our trials in the cloud, it will definitely take care of all costs associated with HYCU. But I think I'll have to follow up on if that considers the actual storage costs within the AWS storage tier. So I will find that out, and we'll follow up as well. Just
and like Casey, I know we only have a minute left here, but one thing that we didn't get a chance to talk about was our HYCU Protégé for M365. So like some of our customers are already leveraging the solution. It is a true SaaS solution. There's no software deployed, nothing to maintain, just like with our GCP model or Azure. But it allows you backing up Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, including Exchange on-prem, as well as even migrating folders into or mailboxes from Gmail, and a lot of e-discovery capabilities. So
perfect. Yeah, a lot of customers moving towards that, especially with all the Office 365 hacks as of lately. I guess, is there any other questions? I know they give us a little buffer zone on this demo-nar, and we'll have about 5 minutes to answer questions. If you guys have any, just throw them in the chat. It's the question mark to the right side of the screen. And if there are any questions that come, both Carlos and I are available. It's my email is first name dot last name, so casey.roan, ROAN, at HYCU.com. And Carlos is first name dot last name as well. So if you guys have questions, feel free to follow up, and we'll be sure to just get an email out to you guys as well via the registration, and we'll be happy to chat through anything then. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate the time, everybody, and appreciate you taking some time out of your day. Have a good rest of the day. Thanks, Carlos.
Thanks, guys.